So this is the second of the Chaos Shamanism video casts. Um, hadn't planned on the second, but there it is. Maybe there'll be more after that. I don't know. And I wanted to talk about tradition because Chaos Shamanism is outside of tradition. It's about being sensitive to the spirit at all points and prioritizing that, putting that before tradition or teachings. Now, that might sound like arrogance, hubris. Yeah? Who are you to have an opinion around this? Other guy's an elder, maybe he's in his 80s. Isn't that disrespectful? Who do you think you are? Well, no, it's not. I went through this one myself in my late 30s. I was part of a Buddhist setup, and there was a teacher, and must have been in his 70s by then or 80s. And something in me changed. It's like I'd imbibed what he had to say. I could see the limitations of it as well. And I started putting my own judgment first, which was around what I thought were the limitations in the way he saw things. And other people would try and make me doubt myself. Oh, you just haven't understood. That's what come back to you. Because it's very natural for people to think, well, here's this guy. It's the Buddha. It's Jesus. Who are you to say that they're wrong and you're right? But it's often the limitations of the teacher are the greatest gift to you, because that's where your soul is calling out. I don't agree with that. I don't agree. And you go, shut up. Who are you to have an opinion? Yeah? But you need to have that opinion. So you need to find the things you don't agree with that I say. People are always saying things to me. They're always saying, I don't always agree with you. They never say what it is they don't agree with. They just say, I don't always agree with you. And I go, well, good. It'd be dreadful if you did always agree with me. So, there always needs to be that gap between us and whatever tradition that we're inspired by, that has nourished us. There always has to be that gap. Chaos shamanism stands for that gap, if you like, and the soul speaking behind that gap. So where are we in terms of tradition? This is the main point that I want to come at, because we don't have one in the modern world. There's the remnants of Christianity, and that still works for some people. There's Islam for some people, but even then, I mean, for Christianity, it's not a unifying myth in the way that it used to be, because you've got a very different unifying myth of, well, it's not even unifying, the scientific myth. Well, in a way, that is unifying for a lot of people, but it's not absolute. We haven't got one myth for the culture, and we haven't got one tradition that goes back, and that's not normal. And there's a freedom in that. There's a freedom in that as well. There's a freedom as well as a limitation, and this is where chaos shamanism comes in. There's a freedom in not having a tradition that you feel obliged to be part of. I mean, imagine being a woman in a Muslim culture and you wanted to go your own way and not marry who you were told to marry. Well, that would be absolutely outrageous. You'd go through a huge amount of self-doubt. You need an awful lot of courage and self-belief to do that. And it's the same in any traditional culture. If you want to live outside of the way it sees the universe. Even in an indigenous culture, well, it would be very samey, wouldn't it? I mean, yeah, it would be deep, yeah, be old traditions, but you can't just reinvent them. The elders can, slowly, yeah, they've earned the right to because they've mastered the tradition. So we do have this freedom just to follow our own spirit and where it calls us, and to take from whatever speaks to us, whether it's shamanic traditions, Native American, Australian, whatever it is, African, yeah, astrology, yeah, all these different things that are around that can speak to us. And that, in a way, that's the spirit of the new age. And of course, it has its own downsides as well. It can be approached superficially. And that's what I want to get at here is how do we do this? We have this freedom to follow our own spirits and build something that really suits us. But it's not just like going shopping and picking and choosing. It's not whimsical. It's deeper than that. If you do decide to align yourself with a tradition, or at least dive into it for a while, I don't think fully aligning yourself with any tradition is ultimately the right thing to do. Yeah, because ultimately we are outside. Any tradition is there to help our individual soul sort of unfold and find its connection to everything and its own gifts and its own meaning and all the rest of it. It serves that. It's not the thing itself. But if we're part of a tradition, we need to master it and master ourselves before we have the right to reinvent. Otherwise, it does get superficial. And most importantly, we need to master ourselves. I don't mean the sense of mastery over, but we need to have been with ourselves for many years. That's the real path, is being with ourselves, coming close to ourselves. And that brings us close to everything. And that, in a way, is what any tradition is about, is bringing people close to themselves. Because people, they've got busy lives. They tend to naturally look outwards and not inwards, and to assess the values they're living from, and what values they want to live from, and what deeper choices they have with who they're going to be. It's like almost that's what life's about, is choosing moment by moment who you're going to be. Do you want to be the sort of person that lies, that is dissembling, that is not courageous about who you are? Well, sometimes we do that, but then we realize we've let ourselves down. So it's that moment by moment choice. And it's just living with ourselves outside of any tradition, just living with ourselves as a human being, because we have a knowing. We have a knowing that is inherent. We have a conscience that is inherent. Something in us feels wrong if we don't tell the truth. And that isn't just brainwashing. That isn't just cultural conditioning. In a way, the cultural conditioning reflects that kind of innate knowledge in us. So we're always living from those choices about who we want to be. And that is what chaos shamanism is. It's about living from that, always living from that. And we have this freedom. That's the great thing. So I do astrology. I reinvent it as I go along. I do the medicine wheel. I do journeying. I do all these things. And the medicine wheel is a good example. I wrote a book on the medicine wheel. I'd had no formal training in it. Yeah. No traditional training at any rate. And I reinvented it for myself. And what gave me the right to do that was that I'd spent like 40 years with myself, struggling with myself, making my mistakes, being prepared to be with my shadow stuff and not just anesthetizing myself, being honest with myself. Up to a point, of course I've made mistakes, but that was my qualification to write that book. Now, some people would say it's cultural appropriation. You've got no right to do that. Yeah, it's a foreign culture. Well, some of them would say that. Others would say not. It's not like this blanket statement that is cultural appropriation. Some Native Americans would say that, or Indians as they call themselves. Yeah, and some wouldn't say that. Some would say, go for it. You need to run with this thing. These teachings are valuable, so run with them. So this is how chaos shamanism works. You stay with yourself. You learn yourself. Learn about yourself. Learn how to be. And then that gives you the right to run ceremonies, to teach. You have something to say and to reinvent as you go along. There's your empowerment. You don't get initiations or empowerments from outside yourself. You get them from within by staying with yourself, staying at that coalface, year in, year out. Okay, bye for now.